Happy holidays. Welcome back to day 5 of the 25 Days of Flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar. We are 1/5 of the way through our 25 days. It's been a great first 5 days, and today I have something really quick and simple for you. Since I've been trying to do a 15-minute video, let's see if I can succeed today. So, today's flow is going to help you to query accounts from the press of a button. So this is one of those instant flows, and I don't think we've done an instant yet, if I can remember. But an instant one, you can press a button on your mobile device, or you can press a button and you can just run it from your computer screen and fill out the different things you need to fill out in the computer scene. So in both ways, whether you're in a browser or whether on your mobile phone, you'll be able to do this. But it's a handy little thing to think about. So think about all the different data sources you use. What data sources do you often have a question about? Like, oh man, I wish I could remember what the phone number was of my account. Or I wish I could remember that change order value. Or I wish I could remember that last RFI, right? So things that you use often, you can actually set up your own button queries to that thing so that on demand you can just get an answer. So if you're out with a customer or you're out in the field, you don't have to go log into anything. You can just use your button to get what you need. All right. So let me kind of break this down into what we're going to do. Basically, we're going to use two connectors today. The common data service is premium, and the flow button for mobile is standard and freemium, right? So if you want to use that flow button, you can always use it, and I love it. It's my favorite connector, to be honest with you. The common data service is a common place where people will be holding accounts information. That's why I chose it today. So customer data, CRM data, ERP data, all of that kind of data is in Dynamics usually or Salesforce. So I chose to use the common data service because that would probably be the likely place that you would have accounts. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up a button to ask a question so that every time you press it, the first thing it does is ask you a question. And then it's going to take that question and push it into the flow as a query string. So that now when it goes and looks for that record, it will use the value that you gave it in the button. And then, as you can see on the far right, it will pop up whatever you want. It'll give you a push notification directly to your phone. So button press on the phone, within 2 minutes, within 1 minute, you will have the answer to your question. And what I chose to do is just get the street address, the city, and the state that's associated with these sample accounts. Okay, so let's go do it. Let's see how fast we can do it. I'm going to go to flow, and we're going to make a new, because we're doing instant, a new instant flow. I like to name these something short, and the reason is because on my phone I'm going to see a little circular button, and it's kind of hard to read a long line of text inside a small button. So I keep the name short so that I'll be able to read it on my phone. And then it's always the first trigger to manually trigger a flow, so really easy to find. And then I'm going to do create. And now here's where I'm going to add that parameter that I'm going to pass into the flow. So I'm going to click on this, and you'll notice that when I click add an input, you can add text inputs, yes, no inputs, files such as photos, emails, numbers, and dates. So what I'm going to do is give myself, this is really a tool that I'm making for myself, although I could also make it for my team, where what I'm doing is I'm prompting them to select an account name. So I'm just going to do select an account name below. And I think this is a little bit safer than having them type, but they can also type, right? So if you let them type, I suggest you add data validation in case what they typed is not found. All right, and we'll talk about data validation next week for sure. All right, so in here, I know that I have 3 that I use all the time, which is contractor 1 sample. And these are just samples that I have put into Power Apps for this reason. So contractor 2 sample, and then I'm just tabbing to get to the next line. And every time I tab, it gives me another line. All right, so now I have 3 here. Now this works really well if I have like less than 10 accounts, because what I can't do is I can't connect this button to live data so that the drop down is interactive. I have to kind of pre-configure this. And so it's best for when you have less than 10 selections, but you could do more. You just have to be careful that you are doing them to match your data. So I usually keep my data source in a tab in the same browser instance, so that I can kind of look back at my data source to make sure that it matches what I'm doing. And you can see here that I'm targeting these 3 sample accounts down here: contractor 1, contractor 2, and contractor 3. I know they all have addresses and they have some PCO and change order numbers, but I'm not going to get these this week. We will get these soon because I have a fun new thing to show you about formatting numbers soon. All right, so now I'm sure that I have the right contractor names. Now I'm going to add the Common Data Service connector, and this connector has these actions. I'm going to use list records. Notice it is clearly tagged as a premium connector. Okay, so now I'm going to set this to current environment just to make it easy to move it around if I need to. And I'm going to use the accounts entity. And then here's where I'm going to add a filter query. Now you might remember earlier this week, we did one where I set up a trigger condition because I wanted to make sure there was a condition on the trigger. I always filter, whether it be the trigger or whether it be a data query or a get. This is really a get method because we are using a REST API to connect to this data. But I want to query it as soon as I can. And so I don't wait and then do filters unless I really have to. I always try and filter first. It gives me the fastest results. So the filter query I want here is I want name, which is the internal name of the account name. So if I go back to Power Apps here, you'll notice that the account name column is where I have contractor 1, 2, and 3. But if I move over to the fields for this entity and look at account name, the logical or internal name is just name. The OData query does not understand the display name. It needs the logical internal name. So just take a peek. It's really easy to get all the internal names just by looking at the fields in the entity. Okay, so now I'm going to type one of the operators for OData queries, which is equal. So there's equal, EQ, there's greater than, and I will give you a link to OData query guidance. But here's the tip about OData queries. They are different depending on the API that's involved. And so it's not completely consistent, but I find most operators are consistent. So I will put some notes on this on the community page where this video is so that you have some guidance. But whatever it is your data source, you might want to just do a quick Bing or a quick Google and see what is the OData requirements for that particular data source so that you will know in advance. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is just put a single quotation and go to my dynamic content, and I'm going to pull up the account name that I used in the button. So this is what we had put in the button. And you can tell that because you see how we've got this one thing, because we only have one trigger above us, and the dynamic content only gives you what's above you. So we have only one section, and in the bottom of that section, you can see the one that I typed, which was account name. And then I want to put another quotation, and these are both single, so there's a single quotation mark on either side of account name. This means that this result will be just one record because we do not have duplicate account names in CDS. But Flow will continue to look at this as if it was a table array because it started out with an action that is plural. It's listing records. So it's going to treat it like it's an array. So that's okay. We're fine with that. We're going to go to the next step, which is the last step, and we're going to get back our information in a mobile notification. And all we want here in this box is the address, the city, and the state. So I'm going to go over here and press my plus sign, and notice that now my dynamic content has the trigger, manually trigger a flow, and list records, which is the second one. So I'm going to open up the list records now, and I want to look through this and find address 1, street 1, and notice that it immediately put me into an apply for each. Again, the reason being that list records is a table of results. And even though there's only one, Flow is going to treat it that way no matter what. So that's fine though. We're just going to get a mobile notification for each one, but we're only going to have one. So we're cool either way, right? So I'm going to open this up, and because it did that operation for me, it actually did not keep what I selected. Instead, it made sure my apply to each is associated with the list records. It knows that the field I picked was part of list records, and so it corrected the apply to each, but it's going to make me select this again. And that's fine. I'm okay with that, right? Aren't you? All right, so I'm going to pick address 1, street 1. I'm going to put my punctuation, just a little comma, because this is exactly what I'm going to see on my phone, and a space. And then I'm going to put the city, and then comma, and a space. And then I'm going to put the state. Now, I am using CDS. Depending on your data source, you will pick the fields that apply. But I do want to point out that I am using all 3 address 1s because I know for a fact that I don't have any data in address 2. So it is important to kind of have an idea of what your data source is doing before you start kind of playing with Flow. Because if you don't know where these values are, it's going to be hard for you, or you're going to do a lot of trial and error. Okay? FYI, I don't include links when it comes to the mobile notification because it would take quite a bit of manipulation to get the right mobile app to pop up, if you're using Dynamics versus, using Power Apps and Flow applications. So what I do is I don't include a link on the phone because it's not needed in this case at all. But if I needed a link for the email, like if I decided I wanted to put this in an email notification, then the link would be useful because it could take me to the actual record in Dynamics. And so if you want to do that, all you have to do is highlight the whole URL except the GUID at the end. So everything except the GUID at the end, and then you can paste that in here. And what you want to be there after that equal sign instead of the GUID at the end is the dynamic content called account, pure and simple. And the account, pure and simple, is the account ID. And this link will work beautifully in your email. So you can do edit, form, or whatever you want to say there. And you click on it and it will open your page up in Dynamics. So I really like that experience. But we don't need it on the phone because there are a few mobile apps and it would have to be a little bit of manipulation there. So it's not relevant on the phone. It's relevant when you send an email or if you're using a desktop application. So now let's give this a try. So I'm going to save it and run a quick test. And you'll notice that it'll check my connections, of course, but then it gives me this drop down. And this is the same thing I will see on my phone. I will see the same drop down. I can pick one of my accounts. I can run the flow. On my phone, I will get an immediate push notification with the answer. So a little bit different than the desktop, because here I'm actually going to go look and see. You can see the result right here. All right. But on my phone, you would see what you saw here on the right side here. So this is a really cool thing, but I'd like you to be creative about this. Think about all the different things you would like to query that you have access to, and make yourself a button to do that for you, so that you have this handy way of asking questions to your data. And remember, because you are working with the Power Platform, you can actually get an answer that includes multiple data sources. Because maybe I want their pending invoice amount in this line right here as well. So I would connect to a different entity, and this one message can include data from entity accounts and data from entity invoices, or an information that is found in SharePoint that associates with that account. So get creative with this. There's a lot of ways you can save time and enable yourself to query data. And I'm so sorry I went a little bit over time, but I'm going to get better at 15 minutes. And I want you to know it's only because I have so much fun showing you this great value. I'm wishing you a happy holidays, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow when we have day 6 of the 25 Days of Flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar.